and welcome to Health and Safety to Go, a podcast from the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. We're living in a rapidly changing world, and alongside changes in technology, the environment, and geopolitics, the workplace is changing too. What motivates workers is changing. Here to discuss how this is shaping the future of work is Tyler Waye, a work and leadership strategist known for translating leading research into actionable strategies. Tyler is the managing partner of Motiversity, producer of the Icons podcast, and co-founder of Mindset app. It's great to have you here, Tyler.
Thanks, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, set the scene for us. What are some of the factors that are reshaping the world of work right now?
Ashley, it's such a big question, actually. It's a question that it took us all around the world trying to uncover. And, that sounds like a really bold way to start an answer to a question, but about 2016, 2017, we were working in the space where we were trying to help organizations and people get ready for what's coming next. And for a long time, there was kind of an assumption that we could base what's coming next on what's come before. And people could say, follow us, we know where this is going. And as a result, employees could start to kind of think through their next steps based on the skills they had or kind of the expertise they had or the experience they had. And about that time, 2016, 2017, we started to realize that there was quite a few more fears and factors that people were thinking about. And in particular, organizations and people were saying, I've long assumed I knew where things are going, and I'm not quite sure that I do anymore. And, trying to teach in that space and be a consultant in that space, we didn't have a good answer for them. There was no textbook for it. We ended up doing a project where we were trying to understand influences into the world of work by going all around the world. And we ended up going to 15 different countries over 15 months. So we'd spend a month per country and try to, embed ourselves in the world of work where we were and understand from CEOs or from everyday people, like what do they see when they look into the future? And the goal was to try to outthink change. Could we go around the world and try to figure it all out and put a nice bow around it and come back and tell people about it? And within a few months, within a few countries, we realized it was impossible. And this task that we'd taken on to kind of outthink all the big factors that you were talking about, geopolitics and digitization and demographics and migration of people, it's just so vast. And then something connected. And we went from trying to predict the changes that were happening around the world. And what we did instead was start to predict the challenges. And that flip from predicting change to predicting challenge was really instrumental for us. And we couldn't know when technology would come in and impact your job or your organization, but we could guess that it would. And once it did, how would you deal with that challenge? And so we started to kind of have a better sense around the future by not outthinking change, but by trying to figure out the challenges. And I'm going into this kind of this context because we discovered the 4 big challenges that we felt like would really define the coming decades of work. And they sound different than a lot of people think when they think about the future of work and they think ChatGPT or something that kind of sounds tech-ish.
Right.
What we discovered instead was that there was this human experience of work that connected about 4 billion people around the globe who went and did this activity every day or for at least 10,000 days in their life. And the challenges we started to discover that almost everyone would run into was first, can you find work? And I know that, maybe depending on where you're listening to this from, that may not seem like the biggest challenges, but there's places in the world where that is a big challenge. And I would say that even in places where it doesn't feel like a challenge, maybe to you or to me, there's still a lot of people who are trying to figure that piece out of what are the skills that are valuable to other people. So that was challenge 1. Challenge 2 was interesting. Challenge 2 was around this expression of work that would sneak up for people or would kind of come towards them. And it was really around engagement at work. So once you've got a job, can you stay engaged with that work? Like once work shows you how sharp of teeth it can have, and either you get frustrated with it or it starts to be somewhat unfair to you or all sorts of things that can happen, how do you continue on with that relationship? And we could anticipate that almost everyone will find a point in their career or multiple points where they would feel that pressure around engagement. Challenge 3 was kind of connected to the tech piece. And that was, if you can find work and you can stay engaged, can you stay relevant? Given all the changes that are coming, can your skills and can your experiences stay valuable to other people? And that was one that was starting to kind of pick up a lot of speed over that time period and is continuing to pick up speed.
Right.
And challenge 4 really snuck up on us. We didn't expect it to land the way that it did. And it was this idea that if we can find work and we can stay engaged and we can stay relevant, can we stay healthy?
Hmm.
And health was sneaking up as a factor all around the world, whether it was physical health or mental health or emotional health. We were just noticing how damaging work can be, how promising it can be, but also how hard it can be on people. So we started to realize that those 4 challenges, were almost universal, and they would really define where the future went and are influencing today in drastic ways.
Right. Well, I think that dovetails well into the second question, and you kind of addressed it a little bit, but how are these challenges and these factors impacting workers from a health and safety perspective?
Yeah, there's the direct way. So, that 4th challenge of can we stay healthy? Obviously, that's touching on this in like very clear terms.
Hmm.
But I wouldn't say that's the only place that it affects health and safety. For example, challenge 2, this idea of engagement. Gallup would say that if they compare the highest engaged organizations versus the bottom engaged, top quartile versus bottom quartile, there's about a 60+% difference in terms of workplace safety incidences.
Hmm.
Just that idea of engagement. And so
Yeah.
it's not just this thing that kind of connects to you if you feel burnout or you feel like this isn't working for me or it's hard on your body. Engagement and other factors can play a huge role in health and safety. And I think that that's an interesting layer to all this. Sometimes people will look at those 4 challenges I laid out and say, well, what about the other stuff that we know is happening? There's big problems with work around fairness and equity and all those pieces. Where we find that those actually apply is at every single one of those challenges. That,
Hmm.
if there's a bias at work, that's going to affect you at the skills development stage. It's going to affect you at the engagement stage or the relevancy or the health. And we find the same thing around health and safety is that in lots of ways, these pieces are connected at almost every step. Because you can imagine for that person who can't find a job, that's
Yeah.
got quite a bit of impact on them too. So it's interesting how many layers this goes deep.
So, from an employer perspective, what can organizations do now to become the workplaces of the future? How can they keep their workers engaged and thriving?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I would say one that's still really alive. If we go back in time, there was a big set of discoveries, I think, that then started to become practice and were really helpful at work. And there's a phrase that I use sometimes that kind of states it well. There's a performance expert out of the UK, and when he was taking over an organization to try to raise the bar, he said, "What we're going to do is take the crown off the head of the coach and put it on the head of the rider." He
Hmm.
works with riders, and I think that was almost the first piece that needed to come into place. Is that we recognize that this is about people. Work is about people. People were doing it long before we had organizations. It's really deep in our DNA to do it to help ourselves and to help other people. And when we put the focus on the individual and the human experience of work, a real opportunity arrives. And so this idea of taking the crown off the head of the organization and putting it on the head of the rider, I think that's the first piece that's fundamental.
Hmm.
The second piece that we're learning more and more of late, I just had an interview with someone named Dr. David Yeager, and he works on mindset. And so he works with Carol Dweck, who wrote kind of the preeminent book on growth mindset, and they do a bunch of research together. And he was talking about this combination of high support, so that idea of taking the crown off the organization, but also high standards.
Hmm.
And that both those pieces now really go hand in hand. And I'd say that's the part that we're learning how to keep alive. What's the right balance point there? It's probably different for every person and every organization. But this idea that high support and high standards can really create a climate where people know what's expected, how high the bar is, and also feel like they've got the support of those around them to get there. And we feel like that's almost the strongest way to put it in short ways to help people get ready and organizations get ready for the future.
That makes sense. What's something workers can do to help shape the changes that they'd like to see in their workplace?
I think this is a really fundamental question. Not everyone would feel like they've got high support or high standards or really would understand what that means. Or maybe they're at the stage where engagement's a factor for them for multiple reasons. There's all sorts of things that pop up over our 10,000 days. And the question is, what do you do?
Right.
And there's a word that we've heard a lot about lately, leadership that we kind of know what it means and we kind of use it in the right way, but leadership, before we even had a word for it, was a set of actions that were really powerful for people. And it's the set of actions that says, if you're on a path that's working, you keep going. And if you're on a path that's not working, you create an inflection point or a pivot and you start down a new pathway. And so I would say this mindset of leadership, it doesn't require a title, it doesn't require a promotion. It's something that all of us can grab hold of. And I think it's really fundamental to, if you feel like work is working, keep going. And if you feel like you need to make a shift, empower yourself to recognize you can make that shift. And it doesn't mean you need to leave your role. It means that, you can start to invite yourself to do the things that you love or can have impact in a positive way on other people. So I'd say leadership is really core to kind of the individual experience of work. The second is listening. And I think that listening has lots of pieces to it. One is, how do you know if you're on the right path or not? Part of it is to listen to yourself. Part of it's to listen to other people. We would also discover that in lots of organizations, one of the greatest opportunities nowadays is to connect with our customers in new ways. And that's an opportunity that lots of us have. And whether it's customers in terms of, in a company setting or a participant who's kind of in your organizational setting or somebody who's got some kind of connection, that human to human component of work is so rewarding for individuals. And it's also so rewarding for organizations to better understand it. And so I would say, listening and leadership go hand in hand right now. Listen to yourself and listen to others around you. And when you discover it's not working out anymore, to create those inflection points, either by targeting new activities you can do, engaging with new people, or exploring wider change.
I love that. Is there anything else you'd like our audience to know?
Ashley, we've touched on it, but I think there's this, again, this idea of work that we all understand. So many of us do it. It drives all of us crazy, but it's also so powerful. It's this 4-letter word that is really unique to humans. We're the only living thing that does it. All other living things wake up to the exact same experience every day. And we've discovered how to change our future through work, how to lift our lives through work. And the greatest example of that is if each one of us listening to this can think back to just the generations that have come before them, your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents, and to think about what they've done to get us into this conversation. It's such an amazing opportunity of work that with these 10,000 days, taking these tiny little steps every day, there's this promise that it can lift our lives. And that doesn't mean that it happens for every person in all moments, in all ways. Like I get the hard parts, and we've been around the world and seen the hard parts of work. But there is this promise that if we can just keep taking those steps forward and believe in it through the human experience, that we can really lift our lives and lift the lives of other people. And that's the exchange that's long been at the foundation of work. We did it for hundreds of thousands of years before money was invented. Work is so much a part of our DNA. And when we get back to that human experience, pieces of it come back that feel organic and real and powerful. And it does have this opportunity to lift lives. And so I would say I fell in love with work through feeling a frustration with it. Mm-hmm. And when we zoom out and see the big picture of it, it really does provide this opportunity to take on those 10,000 days in different ways.
I love that. And I think you're speaking to sort of the idea of work being not our whole purpose, but being infused with purpose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tyler Waye, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today. For more information on the future of work and many other health and safety topics, visit our website, ccohs.ca. Thanks for being here and stay safe.